A story begins with Jiren, a sweet, intelligent girl with a good heart who feels trapped in a miserable job where her boss forces her to wear silly costumes and hand out chocolates to strangers on Valentine's Day, exposing her to constant embarrassment. And since it is the day of lovers, she messages her boyfriend to ask if they can celebrate like a normal couple, but she receives a cold reply that freezes her completely and even threatens to block her. So she curses the moment she ever met him, and immediately everything gets worse when her cruel boss starts shouting at her. A man so heartless that he even sells expired products to children, and when Jiren tries to warn one of them, he shuts her down with a scream as if her conscience could ever pay his bills. And at that point, Jiren has had enough, collects her remaining pay, and walks out of the store, only for the day to hit her again when she later finds her so-called boyfriend in a cafe with another woman. So she walks up to him in front of everyone and confronts him for lying about being busy, noticing too how easily he now pays for things he always refused to pay when he was with her. And since the public humiliation he gave her is not enough, she grabs a glass of water and throws it in his face and then throws a second one, and immediately other women in the cafe who also feel wronged line up and throw water at him one by one. After which, Jiren takes refuge with her friend, who comforts her by reminding her she deserves something better and tries to cheer her up by giving her a voucher for a room in a 5-star hotel. So Jiren heads to the hotel where she drinks too much, sings, and dances with such wild energy that the guests complain, causing Muchin, the manager, to go up to her room personally to ask her to be quiet. But since she is drunk, she pulls him inside, clings to him, and refuses to let go as he tries to free himself while she mistakes him for her ex, and during the struggle, she hits him on the head and knocks him out, and eventually both fall asleep. And in the morning, Shirin wakes up, sees a stranger in her room, panics, and he also jumps up startled, but she pushes him out of the room with the same force she used to drag him in before. And later, when she goes to check out, she tries to pay with the card her friend gave her, but the receptionist tells her the room is already covered, even though the minibar charges must be paid, so she vents her anger by leaving a terrible online review of the hotel. And the next day, Mu Cheng attends an important conference where the city's best hotels celebrate record profits, thanks mostly to his management, until suddenly Jiren's negative review appears on the main screen as the first bad comment in years, shocking everyone. But Mention manages the moment with calm and turns it into an opportunity by saying that even after perfection, this kind of feedback reminds them to keep improving. And after the event, Maken decides to meet Shirin in person, calling the contact number from the hotel only to learn it belongs to her friend. And he then tracks Jiren down to a horror movie set where she works, but when Shirin hears he is coming, she plays a prank on him by throwing a fake severed head that scares him so much, he runs to his car and calls the friend again, begging for Jiren's home address. And since it is Jiren's birthday, her friend suggests that if he wants to apologize, he should bring a gift, so he buys one and shows up at her house. And even though Jiren refuses to let him in, he pushes the door and steps inside, and she thinks he only came to force her to delete the bad review. But he surprises her by proposing that she return to the hotel, stay for 3 days, and point out every flaw she finds, so she can then write an honest and heartfelt review. And as an incentive, he offers daily payment, while Jiren tries to stretch the deal to a week by promising a perfect evaluation. But the manager keeps the limit at 3 days and sets the start for the next morning. And finally, a luxury car picks her up and takes her to the hotel where Maken presents a contract. But the terms change and the stay is extended to a full week because of Jiren's pressure and her threat of an even worse review, leaving him no choice but to accept. And that same night, the event organizer asks Jiren to attend a private musical performance to consider her for the hotel's regular entertainment. So she goes, but the show is so boring she falls asleep during it. Yet Mu Cheng loves her reaction and approves the idea immediately. And afterward, Jiren makes a sharp comment about handing out pillows if they plan to continue using that kind of music, which he secretly loves and decides to implement right away. And later, when she returns to her room, a housekeeper arrives to clean and suddenly breaks into tears. And Jiren asks what happened and learns that the employee bought skincare products as a birthday gift for her mother, but the products caused an allergic reaction. And when she complained, the company rudely blamed her and refused a refund, so Jiren comforts her and forms a plan. And as she goes downstairs, she overhears some staff gossiping about her and mocking her for being too low class for such a hotel. But she pretends not to hear and walks up to one of the employees, asks for the same cosmetic product, and applies it directly to the face of the young woman who insulted her. Then they wait for the skin to turn red, take pictures, and post a negative review of the item. And immediately the company contacts the housekeeper, apologizes, and offers compensation in exchange for removing the complaint. And Jiren feels satisfied as if she has truly accomplished something meaningful. And when she heads back to her room, she sees an elderly concierge struggling with a heavy cart, while a rich, arrogant woman refuses to help. So Jiren enters the elevator with her and confronts her boldly, leaving the woman speechless. Then she quickly returns to the concierge to help him with the cart and even apologizes for the scene she caused. And later, Jiren leaves the hotel to visit her grandmother in the hospital where she stays for a while. And meanwhile, Muchin returns to his childhood favorite restaurant to order the same dish his mother used to make for him, so different from the fancy hotel food he now eats. And soon after, he runs into Jiren again and invites her to a special event organized by management. But she is not in the mood to celebrate and refuses, so he gets annoyed annoyed and warns her not to bother the guests or throw employees out of elevators like earlier. And they argue as Jiran calls him fake and arrogant, convinced that his attitude makes him disliked by his staff. But he doesn't care about her words, and later that night when she returns to her room, he calls her in the middle of the night to ask for suggestions for new experiences the hotel could offer. And Shiram suggests adding puzzles or games in the rooms to keep guests entertained. But when he keeps talking endlessly, she hangs up and goes back to sleep. The next morning, she goes down for breakfast and sees an elderly guest begging an employee to help him get his heart medicine. But the worker refuses and says hotel rules do not allow bringing medication inside. And immediately, Jiran feels deeply moved because she remembers that her own father died from not receiving his medicine in time. So without thinking, she runs to a pharmacy to buy it, and Much sees her rushing out and wonders what is happening even though he is busy meeting an important guest who is the manager of a rival hotel. And meanwhile, Jiran returns with the medicine, gives it to the old man, and makes sure he is all right before slipping away quietly. And at the same time, a new guest arrives. Lin, tall and handsome, who draws attention because unlike other rich clients, he treats the staff with kindness and ease. And when he enters his room, he finds a puzzle arranged there and starts playing with it immediately, while Jiran also finds a puzzle in her room and assumes McKen already used her idea. So she goes to ask him, and he admits her suggestion wasn't bad, even though he didn't send it to her room. And then they start exchanging ideas to improve the hotel. But when they try to leave the storage room, they discover the door is stuck. And because Muchen left his phone in the office, there is no way to call for help. So he spreads a blanket on the floor and decides to rest, thinking it might take a while for someone to find them. And eventually he lies down beside her and falls asleep too. And the next morning, the hotel staff finds Jiran and Mucheng sleeping next to each other. And right away, rumors explode, with some claiming they are secretly married, while others invent that Mucheng has a twin brother because they refuse to believe what they saw. And both Jiran and Mucheng feel completely embarrassed and avoid making eye contact with anyone. And later, Jiran goes to a job interview and gets accepted, but becomes uncomfortable when the manager demands a supposed hiring tax that includes water, electricity, and even parts of the staff's salary who greeted her. So she throws the papers at him and walks away. And at the same time, Ning, the hotel's manager, holds a business meeting with Lin to close a deal. But they clash over details, and she tells him to make a decision and inform her later. And later, Lin returns to the hotel, and the moment he steps inside, he runs into Jiran and hugs her with familiarity, shocking the receptionist who thought the greeting was for her. And in reality, Lin and Jiran have known each other for years, even though they hadn't met in a long time. And then they decide to attend the hotel party together, with Lin arriving first, where two girls try to flirt with him, but he ignores them and goes straight to Jiran. And instantly, the jealous girls start harassing her. And during the struggle, Jiran accidentally spills a plate of cake on one of them and immediately apologizes. But the situation escalates and the two girls start a fight, and one grabs a glass of wine to throw at Jiran's face, so the hotel staff hides the remaining glasses, but the attacker manages to find one and throws it, though the liquid ends up splashing onto McKeng, and Jiran rushes to wipe his face with tissues and notices he had makeup on to cover his eye bags, leaving him looking like a panda. And instantly someone takes a picture, uploads it online, and the internet explodes with jokes. And because of that, Muchen, without listening to any explanation, declares that Jiran ruined the event, embarrassed him, and broke too many hotel rules. So he decides she is no longer suitable to work with him and cancels her contract, leaving her devastated as she leaves the hotel and returns home. And meanwhile, McKen regrets it after thinking he went too far and decides to visit her to fix things. But on the way, he sees her crossing the street just as a car almost hits her. And before he can react, Lin steps in, pulls her away, and takes her to a restaurant where Jiran vents to him about how hard her life is right now and how difficult it is to find a decent job. And although Lin offers help, she politely refuses because she does not like favors. And the next day, the hotel sinks into chaos without Giriran, since she used to solve all sudden problems and now nobody knows what to do. And meanwhile, Mucheng leads an important meeting with IT Corporation to attract their conferences. And to his surprise, the representative is Lin, the same man he saw with Jiran the previous day. And Muchen feels a small sting of jealousy, though he tries to hide it. And he lays out the hotel's advantages, but Lin interrupts and conditions the deal on rehiring Jiran with the promise that he himself will pay her salary for the next 3 years. And Mucheng refuses immediately, saying she is no longer useful to the team and that her contract already ended. And finally, the meeting ends without an agreement, and McKen asks Lin for a quick answer because other companies are waiting to sign. And back in his office, Mention cannot stop thinking about Jiran and tries to distract himself. But when he goes down to the lobby to ask guests for comments, the old man she helped earlier thanks the employee who saved his life by getting him his heart medicine in time. And in that moment, Mention realizes how much Jiran did for the hotel, and his guilt grows, while Jiran struggles to find work until she finally gets a job at a juice stand handing out samples on the street. But her new boss makes her uncomfortable by standing too close, and then Mucheng sees her working, secretly buys all the juice, and pays for it to ease her burden. And when Jiran notices, she scolds him and tells him to stop interfering and leave. Yet that night, he comes back to the shop wanting to speak honestly. And from there, McKen asks her to return because he truly needs her, admitting his mistake and showing he finally understands her reasons. But Jiran's pride is still hurt, heart, and she cannot forgive him so easily, so she refuses to come back. And at that moment, the store manager once again gets aggressive, this time right in front of Meng. And because of that, Muchen finally loses his patience, punches him, and pulls Sharon out of the shop. And even though she gets upset at the way he drags her, she still takes the bus home, only to find a huge apology sign held by Mekeng waiting for her when she arrives. And his public confession softens her heart until she finally forgives him. And later she calls Lin to tell him she will return to the hotel. But he is not happy at all because he has just closed a deal with Ning under the condition that Jiran would work at Ning's hotel. Yet instead of going back to Mucheng right away, Jiran decides to show up at the hotel anyway, and this time asks to join the service team so she can stay close to the guests and understand their needs better. And immediately the first challenge appears when a drunk, out-of-control guest arrives, starting fights and threatening to harm himself over an affair, and nobody knows how to calm him until Sharon steps in and cleverly pretends to relate to a similar family situation to create empathy. And the man softens, hands her the bottle, and they drink a few small sips together, which diffuses the crisis. And at that exact moment, Mucheng walks in, sees the scene, and reminds her that this behavior is forbidden, then helps escort the guest away, and afterward takes Jiran to her new room, large and comfortable, and even bigger than her own apartment. And while she explores it with relief, she accidentally cuts her finger, causing Muchen to quickly step forward and wrap the wound gently. And at dawn, Jiren wakes up to a call from her supervisor telling her that Mucheng has set up a key training session where punctuality is non-negotiable. So she hurries there and learns 5-star hotel protocols, guest service, cleaning standards, and world-class procedures. And then she applies everything she learned by practicing directly on Ming as a model. And although her performance is not terrible, she still receives precise corrections to improve. And later, she and her friend Yu practice basic English and French phrases for international guests, but no matter how hard she tries, she cannot memorize a single sentence. And Yu reminds her about the importance of a genuine smile, even though Jiran's forced smile only makes people uncomfortable. And soon after, she is assigned to accompany a foreign guest and show him the hotel, and he talks nonstop, while Jiran only responds with small yeses and nods. And in the middle of that, she accepts something personal without understanding it and creates a misunderstanding, which prompts Mucheng to quickly step in, stop the situation, and guide her back to the room she was supposed to clean, a dusty place with strands of hair on the floor. And from that moment, he demands she repeat the cleaning and stay away from guests, especially foreign ones, to avoid more mistakes. And when her day ends, Jiran meets her friend and vents about the harshness of the job and how strict Muchen is. And her friend gives her simple advice. I don't get closer to him if she wants better treatment, so she thinks about it and decides to try. And the next morning, Maken sends her to an event at Ning's hotel and tells her to secretly take photos of everything important without drawing attention, even giving her a perfect dress to blend in. And once she arrives at the reception, Jilan starts sending him dozens of messages full of pointless comments about food and decoration, but he cuts her off and asks only for useful pictures, so she takes many photos, though most of them are useless. And Muchen calls to redirect her focus, but the moment she answers, she screams, making him panic and rush to the venue only to find there is no emergency at all. She simply got excited over half-price offers and was racing to get the best promotional gifts. And after securing her bag full of free items, she bumps into Lin, invited by Ning, and they talk casually. And just then, Mucheng arrives to make sure Jiran is okay. And still nervous from her sudden scream, he reacts awkwardly while she quickly returns to the main hall to avoid missing any contests. And then the event announces a pair game, and Jiran happily grabs Lin as her partner and tries to register. But Mekeng, driven by jealousy, walks onto the stage and takes her hand, and Lin does not let go. So both men stand there holding her hand, neither willing to release it. And to make things worse, Ning steps in, hoping to pair herself with Meng, but he refuses. And then Ning threatens Jiran with a salary penalty if she doesn't follow her instruction. So Jiran leaves Lin and joins Meng. And the game is simple. Whoever hits the opponent first while blindfolded wins. And in the first round, Muchen faces Lin, moves quicker, and lands the first touch. And then it's Ning versus Jiran. And before Jiran can even react, Ning strikes cleanly and leaves her stunned. And with one win each, the result is declared a tie, and they end the game to continue with a friendly dinner. But even seated Mucheng and Lin keep exchanging tense glances like the competition is still going on. And during dinner, Muchen begins sweating and his makeup melts, showing his dark eye bags again. And Jiran notices quietly, but since she doesn't get the hint, she shows him a picture of a panda on her phone to make him understand his face. And he finally realizes and hides his face while she finds an excuse to take him to the car and fix his makeup. And when they finish, they still have some time, so they relax, get on a bus, share music, and go for a walk. But her heels begin hurting her, so she takes them off and sits on the ground. And in response, Mucheng lifts her onto a luggage cart and pushes her gently through the streets. And the next morning at work, Jiran hears rumors about a supposed ghost that appears at a certain hour in the hotel and kidnaps employees. And she jokes that the only scary thing is an empty wallet. But then she gets a call about strange noises in a nearby room, and when the staff checks, there is no one inside. Although the shadow of a little girl with long hair covering her face appears, and the employee panics, requests leave, and refuses to return. And later, Maken tells Jiran she must improve her language skills because important foreign guests will be arriving soon. And to motivate her, He even raises her salary, and she gets so excited, she jumps on his back and stops him from walking for a moment. And then McKen gathers everyone and ends the ghost rumors, warning that anyone who spreads them will be fired. And afterward, Jiran heads to Lynn's room because he specifically asked for her, and when she arrives, she finds a romantic dinner prepared with candles and everything arranged, yet she focuses only on the food and ignores the romantic atmosphere. And meanwhile, when McKen learns she is with Lynn, he barges in, grabs her hand, and pulls her out, saying staff cannot spend personal time with guests. And later, he meets with Ning to discuss an important deal, but Ning, who has feelings for him, misunderstands and thinks he is making a love confession. And at the same time, Lynn goes to find Jiran to confess his own feelings. And then the surprises begin because McKen only wants to finalize the business agreement, and Jiran rejects Lynn sincerely, telling him she sees him like a brother. And then Ning takes the elevator crying and suddenly sees the hotel ghost inside with her as the little girl hands her the keys she dropped, making Ning scream and run out, and Jiran hears the chaos and goes to check, finding a little girl calmly sitting on the floor without appearing ghostly to her. And the girl confesses that everyone is scared of her, even though she hasn't done anything, and Jiran, trying to comfort her, takes her to buy candy, but the girl suffers a severe allergic reaction, and Jiran panics, calls an ambulance, and contacts Meng, and he goes with the mother to the hospital while Lin and Ning go out together to vent about their romantic failures. And then someone informs Ning that Jiran caused the girl's hospitalization, so Ning decides to exploit the situation, contacts the media to ruin Jiran's reputation, and force her firing. And when Lin hears this, he confronts Ning, but Ning argues that he should thank her and pushes him to go be with Jiran. So Lin goes to comfort her, and she, devastated, keeps repeating that she never meant to hurt anyone. And he calmly reminds her that nobody questions her intentions, and everyone knows she would never do that on purpose. And at the hospital, McKen stays tense, worried about the little girl, while the mother, furious at her ex-husband, blames him for everything and demands to sue the hotel. And when the doctor finally announces that the girl is stable, Muchin breathes in relief. But at the hotel, the father has already filed a complaint demanding Jiran be fired. And the next day, McKen returns to the hospital with a gift and tries to convince the mother to drop the case because Jiran is innocent. But she throws the gift at him and kicks him out. And at the same time, Jiran, still troubled, sneaks in with Lin's help to apologize to the girl. And the child breaks down crying and confesses that her mother never has time for her because she is always working. And that is why she acted that way. And at that moment, the mother overhears. She realizes her mistake and reconciles with her daughter, agreeing to withdraw the lawsuit. And because of this, Muchin feels relieved since he never wanted Jiran to lose her job. And back at the hotel, he gathers the staff and decides to apply only a partial salary deduction for Jiran as a warning instead of firing her. And everyone breathes easier. But immediately after that, Jiran receives a call from the hospital saying her grandmother has been missing since morning, and she panics and runs there. And Muchin joins her, and together they search everywhere until they hear the old woman calling her name. And Sharon finds her, hugs her tightly, and breaks into tears because her grandmother remembers only her name but does not recognize her face. Then even pushes her away thinking she is a stranger and runs off. And finally, Jiran manages to take her back to her room and, furious at the hospital staff for their negligence, warns that if it happens again, she will personally make sure the place is shut down. And afterward, overwhelmed with fear and stress, Shiran drinks too much and ends up completely drunk. And with help from the team, Mucheng brings her back to the hotel. And since several employees see them going into the room together, the rumors about their relationship flare up again. And the next morning, Jiran's friends sit her down and remind her of the scandal from the previous night, telling her she slapped McKenk, made him clean a room, and even asked him to crack his knuckles like a massage therapist, so they advise her to apologize before she gets fired. And embarrassed, Jiran gathers her courage and goes to talk to Meng, but he acts natural to avoid making her uncomfortable and only asks her not to drink like that again. While at the same time, Lin drinks with Ning, feeling defeated after everything with Jiran, and Ning tells him he gave up too quickly and that if he truly loves her, he should fight for her even if she rejected him. And that night, the girls stay up late and an older employee joins them and shares his story, explaining that years ago his wife disappeared, and when he came back from searching for her, he found his home demolished and the hotel built in its place, and it was Muchin who helped him then, saving him from ending up on the street, and since that day he sees him like a son. And hearing this, Jiren realizes that behind Muchin's strict exterior there is a kind heart, and he is not as cold as he seems. And the next day, Jiran decides to take a break and go out with Lin to make it clear she sees him only as a brother, and at the same time, Ning invites Mucheng to lunch and he accepts. And by coincidence, all four of them end up in the same restaurant. And when Mekeng sees Jiran with Lin, he becomes uncomfortable and sits at their table. And during the meal, he sends Jiran messages scolding her for spending her day off with Lin. And she replies telling him to mind his own business. And then Lin starts joking about childhood memories, saying they grew up together and that his father was like a second father to Mucheng. And then Mucheng strikes back with embarrassing stories about her, from skipping school to climbing walls, and eventually both get flustered, stand up from the table and leave. And back at the hotel, a female guest asks Mucheng to help find a lost item in her room. But when he enters, she hugs him tightly and refuses to let go. And Jiran witnesses the scene and reacts instantly by kicking the guest away and even trying to grab her hair. And Mung barely manages to restrain her and orders the immediate removal of the client. And that night, Jiran goes to Mung's room to pick up some documents, and since he doesn't want to eat alone, he asks her to share dinner with him, and the evening slowly turns intimate. And during their quiet conversation, Jiran confronts him about the mutual jealousy they have been showing lately, and when Maken tries to avoid the topic, she opens her heart and confesses her love, and in that moment, Mung's composure melts, and he answers with the same honesty, saying he loves her too. And meanwhile, Lin is having dinner with an important businessman who talks about Makeng's hotel, and it becomes clear the guest is not acting in good faith and plans to take over the hotel, and by coincidence, Ning and Lin end up together later, and after drinking, the conversation naturally drifts to him, and Ning admits how much she loves Maken and says she would do anything to win his heart, but Lin gently tells her that love alone is not enough, and she deserves someone who respects and cherishes her. But Ning drinks too much and gets dizzy, so Lin takes her to the car, and for a moment they get closer than they should, though he pulls away immediately, then brings her to her room, draws on her face playfully while she sleeps, and stays the night on the sofa out of exhaustion. And the next morning, Ning wakes up startled to see him there, and he explains everything with humor. And she, teasing him, bites his hand, while meanwhile, Maken and Jiran keep their relationship secret to avoid gossip, though the staff still catches them more than once interrupting tender moments. And soon after, Mr. Lee, Ning's father, and the real owner of the hotel arrives and believes his daughter is the perfect match for Makeng and begins planning an arranged marriage. And delighted by the idea, Ning invites Maken to lunch with her father. And during the meal, Mr. Lee drops hints about engagement, and a nervous Mu Chang excuses himself early, and Ning follows him, clinging to him and declaring her love again. Just when Jiran arrives and sees them together, misunderstands everything and becomes upset. And although Much tries to explain, she goes to visit her grandmother, who no longer recognizes her clearly. And in whispers, Jiran admits her fear that Ning and her father might trap Muchin with their power, but her grandmother Serena calms her and encourages her to protect the man she loves. And later, when Jiran hears someone scolding Makenk, she grabs the first bottle she can find and rushes to defend him. But when she bursts into the room, she discovers it is Mr. Lee reprimanding him, and she gets her ear pulled and is pushed out. And as she walks through the lobby, she sees a woman with a little girl and freezes because she recognizes her mother. And the bottle slips from her hands and the noise draws attention, while she can barely whisper that it is her mother. And the rest of the day, she wanders with her head down, avoiding everyone and isolating herself. And in that state, her younger sister Yao bumps into her and knocks over her cleaning tools. And Jiran tries to handle things calmly by telling her to change clothes and offering to clean alone. But Yao lashes out with insults and screaming, and their mother appears, hears the fight, and scolds Yao. And finally, Makenk steps in to calm everyone down. But Jiran, her heart aching, chooses to leave before breaking down. And later, her mother comes to apologize and ask forgiveness. But Jiran refuses, remembering the abandonment and pain that followed, including her father's death from heartbreak. And although the mother explains she remarried because of debt, Jiran does not want to hear it. And seeing her emotional weight, Men takes her away to clear her mind and release the tension. And the next day, Mr. Lee hosts a family dinner with Ning and Makeng and openly talks about marriage. And while Sharon watches from afar, she hopes Muchin will reject the idea or at least admit he loves someone else. But he remains silent, a gesture everyone interprets as him considering the arrangement, and Jiran becomes uncomfortable and leaves. And immediately Maken reaches her and begs for time, saying there are things he still cannot fully explain. And at the same time, Ning informs Lin that Jiran is upset, suggesting it is his chance to comfort her, while Mucheng, equally distraught, goes to his usual restaurant and vents to the owner, a father figure, admitting he is torn between a lifetime of hard work and his love for Jiran. And meanwhile, Jiran returns to work exhausted, and her next task is to clean her sister's room where the girl, spoiled by their mother, purposely makes a mess and splashes water everywhere to push her to the limit. But Jiran sees through the manipulation, refuses to clean, and confronts her. And in response, the sister insults her and threatens to report her to Makeng to get her fired. And their mother hears the argument, slaps the younger daughter, and again begs Jiran for forgiveness. But Jiran says she has lived without a mother and will continue to do so, and tells her to stay away from her life. And the next day, mother and daughter leave the hotel, though the mother leaves a letter admitting she failed to handle her broken marriage and debt, acknowledges her selfishness, and asks Jiran to care for herself and value her life so she doesn't repeat her fate. And although Jiran is moved, she returns to her duties and then hears colleagues whisper about Bai, the woman who recently got close to Muchin and is supposedly on the rooftop ready to jump. And Jiran immediately rushes up to stop her, but finds Bai has no intention of harming herself, and instead explains that 3 years ago she met an event organizer at the hotel, fell in love with him, and he disappeared. And ever since, she returns every year on the same date hoping to see him again. And she clarifies that the hug Jiran saw was not romantic toward Meng, but related to that lost love. And moved by this, Jiran asks Meng for the event organizers from 3 years ago. And although it goes against hotel policy, he hands the list to her when he hears Bai's story. And at the same time, Jiran's friend records her first song in a studio but feels exploited by the outfit she is forced to wear and leaves frustrated. And her mother pressures her about staying single, which adds stress until she breaks down and ends up in the hospital. And when Jiran hears this, she rushes rushes there, confirms her friend is stable, and then returns to the hotel to finish her shift out of responsibility. And that night, Mackin surprises both Sharon and Bai by finally bringing her the event organizer she has been waiting for, and he explains that he disappeared because he felt like a burden and didn't want to drag her into his problems. But now they both decide to leave the past behind and move forward together, and Sharon thanks Muchin for this kind gesture. And then he asks her to visit his resort to personally check that everything runs smoothly, and when Lin hears about the trip, he insists on joining her, and Muchin's assistant informs him, so Muchin plans to surprise them and goes to the resort himself. And when Mr. Lee hears the plan, he sends Ning with Muchin, hoping she will grow closer to him. And during the trip, Mucheng and Ning arrive first, and Jiran opens the resort door and welcomes them while keeping Lin at a distance and even watches his room at night to prevent any private conversation. And meanwhile, McKen keeps bothering her with silly excuses, knocking on her door again and again just to tease her. And the next day, everyone goes out to explore the city, and immediately Lin and Muchen compete to stay beside Jiran, pulling her from side to side like stubborn children. And in the middle of the plaza, music starts playing, and Lin invites Jiran to dance. So Mucheng, driven by jealousy, grabs Ning and dances with her too. And suddenly heavy rain pours down, and Lin and Ning hide together inside a big transparent sphere and get trapped, while Mucheng pulls Jiran aside. And at that moment, an old woman sees them and, noticing how close they look, assumes they are husband and wife. And when she learns they are not yet official, she gives them a love lock to hang in a special spot to protect their bond. And when the rain finally stops, Lin gets out of the crowd and with a twisted ankle leans on Ning while Makenk and Jiran hang the lock together. And later back at the resort, Jiran massages Lin's foot to ease the pain, but Muchen immediately pushes her aside and takes over, exaggerating the movement enough to worsen the ankle a little to keep Lin from recovering too fast. And at night, the group eats dinner and falls into their usual tension, arguing even with the table full, and Lin, exhausted, falls asleep on the spot. And Machen leaves shortly after, leaving the two women alone. And then Ning admits her jealousy toward Jiran because in her eyes, Jiran has Mucheng's affection and Lin's attention, while she feels left behind. And she covers Lin with a blanket and goes to rest. And though Lin notices her action, he pretends not to. And when they return from the trip, he stays awake and thoughtful, replaying every moment with Ning, confused by the shift in his feelings. And later, Mucheng and Jiran visit her grandmother in the hospital and bring a gift. And the disoriented elderly woman confuses Lin with Mucheng and believes he is the one who regularly accompanies her. And when Jiran realizes that Makeng has quietly been taking care of her grandmother, she becomes deeply moved and wants to thank him. But for now, she decides to mend another open wound and reconciles with her friend whom she had left alone at the hospital the last time. And the next day, a famous singer named Gao checks into the hotel, once a huge star, though her name no longer shines as before. And she arrives for a press interview, which McKenk organizes with extreme care to avoid problems. But suddenly a fan breaks in for a selfie, and soon others surround her, so McKenk steps in to protect her. And in the chaos, a huge billboard falls on him, and he is rushed to the hospital immediately. And when Jiran hears this, she panics and runs there. And after seeing a covered stretcher and hearing someone mention a death caused by a fallen panel, she breaks down, fearing the worst. But when she turns, she finds Muchen standing alive, and the relief overwhelms her. And after recovering, she returns to the hotel to finish her shift. And while cleaning the assistant's room, she discovers a black bag full of cash, which the assistant snatches before running away. And Jiran follows and takes photos of the assistant, handing the money to a man and thanking him for creating chaos during the press event to draw attention back to Gao. And then Jiran confronts the singer and gets an admission that they hired someone to cause the commotion to make it look like she was still massively loved. But the stunt harmed the hotel's reputation and made it look poorly managed, so Jiran demands she repair the damage with a public confession to Muchen before the video spreads and things get worse. But Gao refuses, exhausted by years of fading fame and clinging to what she once was. So with empathy, Jiran decides not to publish the evidence, but asks her to fix things without hurting Meng. And at the same time, her friend does a live stream crying, saying it will be her last, renouncing her dream and planning to return home, marry, and live a different life, sings once more, then visits Jiran to give her guitar as a memory. And although Jiran respects her decision, she encourages her to choose peace. But moments later, she calls her back because the stream has gone viral and her song has conquered the audience, and the girl goes to perform again. And this time, a crowd surrounds her with love. And meanwhile, Ning reflects on her recent selfishness and goes to apologize to Meng, admitting her mistakes, especially pushing her father to force a marriage, and promises to step away. And at the same time, Lin looks for Jiran and apologizes for his insistence, admitting her happiness is what matters even if he is left out. And the next day, a series of incidents hit the hotel, starting with a guest accusing the elderly employee of drinking from his bottle and finishing it. And the argument escalates and the guest posts a harsh review. And despite being innocent, the old worker is fired, and two more guests complain about a bad smell and cancel their reservations, leaving more negative notes. And since everything happens in one day, McKen suspects deliberate sabotage, reviews the security cameras, and finds a man giving money to the same guest who complained, so he asks his assistant to gather all possible information. And hours later, the assistant reports that the man is extremely wealthy and owns several companies, all funded by ET Corporation, Lin's family company, and immediately Mucheng connects the pieces and believes Lin is behind the sabotage and goes to confront him. And at first, Lin denies any involvement, so Muchen restrains himself and leaves. But moments later, Lin calls his father and gets a direct confession that the operation was his, driven by disappointment in his son. And the bad reviews bring Mr. Lee back to the hotel, and a crucial meeting is held with Lin's father present, who proposes taking over and modernizing the hotel, demolishing the building, constructing a new one, and turning it into an AI-managed smart hotel with 90% staff reduction, saying the building is outdated and automation will guarantee massive savings. And Mr. Lee seems receptive, while Muchen is devastated by the coldness of the decision, and he confronts him privately, reminding him of the emotional value of the hotel since his mother once worked there before passing away, and he loves the place and doesn't want it destroyed. But Mr. Lee, irritated, sees this as selfishness and harshly humiliates him, leaving Mucheng heartbroken, and Jiran comforts him. And just then they hear an elderly guest complaining about the restaurant now run by AI, unable to understand the system, and the guest leaves a brutal review. And right then, inspiration strikes, and Much decides they must attend the contract signing meeting the next day and present an alternative. And meanwhile, Ning discovers Lin's family is behind the sabotage and angrily attacks Lin with hits and hair pulling, then calms down and listens as Lin explains he never wanted this outcome and only wanted to buy the hotel and become a partner, not fire staff or tear it down. But she tells him he must take responsibility for the damage and help Meng because his intentions were not clean, yet Lin chooses not to get involved. And the meeting arrives, and Muchen asks Lin's father to step out briefly because he wants to speak clearly. And with Mr. Lee's permission, he presents a data-supported plan explaining that half the guests are over 40, many from influential families, and a significant portion still struggles with smartphones, internet, and AI systems. So turning the hotel fully automated will push away loyal, high-value guests. And he requests 3 months to restore the hotel's reputation and prove that a guest-centered model is better than a machine-centered one. And after considering it, Mr. Lee agrees. And over the next 3 months, the team renovates the hotel, and McKeng even convinces Lin to help, and Ning joins as well. And they contact celebrities and influencers who once stayed there asking for positive reviews, and Jiran asks her now famous friend to schedule a special concert on the hotel's deadline day. But Mr. Lee remains skeptical and feels the hotel is still outdated compared to AI-run hotels, and plans to sign the contract with Lin's father, though he delays the signing due to prior commitments. And days later, the ceremony is rescheduled, and Much attends with nothing left except pleading with Mr. Lee not to demolish the hotel. And Lin's father tries to ease the moment by saying McKen is young and will have many opportunities ahead, and urges the board to decide without emotional appeal, then calls for a vote, and the members raise their hands supporting his proposal. And Muchen is crushed until suddenly Mr. Lee withdraws his support for demolition, shocking the room. And Lin becomes furious and demands an explanation. And Mr. Lee says he thought about it and sees no problem in preserving the hotel because not everything is profit. The place holds memories. It was the first hotel he built, and the rest of his properties earn enough to sustain the company. And hearing this, Lin's father becomes furious, lashes out at Mr. Lee, and storms out. And Muchen celebrates the outcome and reunites with Lin, Ning, and Jiran, thanking them for everything. And later, Mr. Lee calls Muchen privately to the hotel and reveals he changed his mind thanks to Jiran, who approached him earlier and asked him not to focus only on profit and warned that destroying the memories tied to the hotel would be a mistake. And those words moved him. But during their conversation, Mr. Lee's health worsens and he is rushed to the hospital. And at the same time, Lin meets his father, who, fueled by anger, collapses as well. And both are admitted to the same hospital where they once again argue despite everything. And meanwhile, Ning finally accepts her feelings for Lin, meets him, gently admits her love, but still decides to say goodbye because she knows they should not be together. And then Shirin meets with McKen and reveals that she was the one who convinced Mr. Lee, but clarifies the condition. She must stay away from McKen for 2 years and go abroad to train, promising to return to help strengthen the hotel. And though Muchen wants to keep her close, she stands firm, believing this time will not harm their relationship, so he respects her choice and trusts her. And before leaving, Jiran visits her grandmother and says goodbye, promising to return soon, but cries uncontrollably on the way out, fearing losing her while she's gone. And afterward, Mucheng takes her to her family home, and they spend the night agreeing on daily communication routines to share every detail of their lives. And the next day, Jiran says goodbye to her hotel friends and waits for Muchen to go to the airport. But first, his assistant arrives, saying Muchen had an urgent meeting, and furious, she gets in the car and curses nonstop until she discovers the driver is actually Mucheng, who planned to surprise her and take her personally, and he accompanies her to the airport and she departs. And 1 year passes, during which McKen contacts her daily, sends updates, and cares for the grandmother with constant visits and photos to ease her absence. But Jiran's replies become sparse and eventually stop completely, breaking Muchen's heart. Yet suddenly, extraordinary news brightens everything. The hotel wins the award for best hotel in the entire country, and when Ning hears this, she goes to congratulate McKeng and arrives together with Lin, and they also announce their wedding meeting after having recognized throughout the year that they truly love each other, and shortly after, McKen discovers that Jaron has returned and now holds an important position in the marketing department. And when he tries to greet her, she simply walks past him and ignores him the entire day. And later that night, he finds her dressed as Santa Claus holding a gift box filled with photos of the two of them. And then she hides behind a tree, changes into a wedding dress, and with that silent gesture, asks him to marry her, and immediately apologizes for the year of silence, explaining that she worked nonstop to finish in 12 months, what was meant to take 2 so she could return early. And because of that, Muchin forgives her and accepts her proposal, and finally, everyone gathers to celebrate them. And this is how the story ends. So if you enjoyed this drama, so don't forget to subscribe and like the video.